how to video like the future. Colin was kind enough to inject some 80s vibes into the music today as well. Yeah, this is just like, I don't know, some tips and tricks that I've put together to hopefully inspire some Zoom antics, better client presentations, all of the above. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Chris. Everyone calls me Mud. It's appropriate. It is a chosen nickname. You can do that. And for the purposes of today's demo, here are some things I'm going to talk about. So first off, why are we even doing this? So this is just like why do or how to think about the various kinds of meetings and things like that that we do via video, and how to perhaps adapt the way that you approach them. Also, setting up your video setup. What are some things that you can do to improve your setup? Tweaking your software, and just sort of like utilities and things like that that can help with video conferencing. And finally, what kind of trickery is this? Where we'll get into some of the more fancy stuff, I guess, that you're seeing on the screen, and things like, when I throw up clapping GIFs and things like that. So anyway, let's get started with why are we even doing this? So don't worry, I'm still here. So why are we even doing this? I think it's worth talking through just like a couple of different ways that we're using video these days. So there's things like webinars, presentations, meetings, and one-on-ones. And I think this is just useful context to have for this. So webinars, I define that as sort of like a one or few to many with feedback via tools. Viewers can't see each other, so I'm sure people have attended webinars before. We've been doing some of them more recently. And yeah, I think it's, it's a very particular kind of video interaction where you as a presenter might not necessarily be able to get visual or audio feedback from the people who are attending, right? Presentations, we do lots of these, both internal and to clients. The idea is that, one or few to many with feedback via tools and video. Usually participants can see each other. Regular old-fashioned meetings, many to many with feedback via video. Usually you're just talking to each other. Sometimes you're sharing your screens. And then obviously one-on-ones, which are one-to-one, feedback via video or audio. And I encourage people, it's okay to use audio. You can turn your camera off if you need to, especially, if it's a working session or you're just having a conversation. Yeah, I think like the approach can be different in those situations. Moving along, setting up your setup. So just going to talk through very quickly some thoughts around framing, lighting, audio, and video. I think, let's do lighting first. I think the first and best thing you can do is get a key light. And by key light, I just mean like it can be a lamp. If you want to get fancy, you can get something like this by Elgato. It's, you can turn the brightness up and down and change the color and things like that. And if you want to get really fancy, you can get these lights by Philips Hue, which can also like create some nice ambiance for your workspace. I think also in terms of lighting, use what you have. So if you've got natural light coming into the room, let that do its thing. I think when it comes to natural light, ideally it's in front of you, not behind you, because it can wash out the camera, wash out your image. yeah, I think it's just, little things like that. And even just, something as little as a $25 lamp can help a lot. If you've got a wall behind your computer, I think you can bounce the light off the wall as well. I think that can be really helpful in terms of just like adding some soft light to your image. I think can help quite a bit in terms of how people take you in and how they pay attention. In terms of framing, let me switch things up here a little bit. As you can see here, I'm like framed in a very particular way. You can use something like rule of thirds if you want to think about it. So, your shoulders or the back, kind of like on the horizon here, your eyes kind of in the center around this top line right here. I think it's really helpful. It's also like very common. People are used to that. People expect that. These are the kinds of things that photographers use, videographers use. And you can't, unfortunately, I think also in some cases, especially for more formal things, get away from the performative aspect of what video is, right? And so approaching it kind of the way that people are expecting it, I think can be really helpful. Moving along, let's talk about audio. I think, a headset, super helpful. This is the one in this picture, I think is like $30 or something like that. If you've got AirPods, let's use them. I think it can be really helpful in terms of both improving your audio quality, but also improving the way people hear you. If you want to get real fancy, add a mic to it. I think realistically, something like a headset is good enough for Zoom. I don't think it's going to get much better with an external mic just because of how Zoom compresses audio for transmission. But it can be helpful if you're doing, recording or you have ambitions of becoming a podcaster or something like that. When it comes to video, I think we've all complained at this point about the quality of built-in webcams, an external webcam is one of the best things you can do, and is a great way to maybe spend some of that allowance if you want to. They range anywhere from like $50 to $200. Something in the $100, $120 price range is probably good enough, but you can get really fancy. You can get like 4K webcams if you really want to. I use a DSLR, so this is also an option. You can use it with something like this. It's called a cam link. Basically lets you take the video output of your DSLR and put it into your video conferencing software. A lot of camera manufacturers, Canon and Fuji in particular, are releasing drivers. So you can just use sort of like a USB cable from your camera into your computer and grab an image that way. I think Panasonic released a sort of 50-50 version of it, and Sony hasn't done anything yet, but I'm sure kind of by the end of the year, there's going to be good versions of drivers for relatively recent cameras available. Another option is Camo. So this is a pretty new app. It got released in the last few weeks, and it lets you use your iPhone camera as a camera. So you basically plug your iPhone in via Lightning to USB cable and launch the app on your desktop, and it gives you a super high quality camera that you can use for whatever you want. I think it supports iPads as well. So that that might be a better option, especially if it's something you already have. And most of us have phones. I think it's iPhone only and Mac only, but I'm sure other versions of this kind of stuff will be coming out very shortly. Moving along, just to talk through some software stuff. I thought it would be useful. I'll share some details or some hints, pro tips about sharing decks, and then we can talk about some utilities I found helpful as well. In terms of sharing decks, we use Keynote a lot, and up until recently, if you ran Keynote, it would just give you this full screen view that you couldn't really do anything with because you couldn't see anything else. So you can't take advantage of Zoom's, share a window or whatever. But they just released a version, I think like last week, that lets you play your slideshow in a window, which is super helpful. So you can run it in a little window on the side, grab that and share it on Zoom. and look at your notes or talk in Slack or whatever else you might need to do while the presentation is going on. You can do the equivalent in Google Slides as well. So if you click on that little drop down and go into presenter view, it gives you two windows, one with your notes and one that's just the slides, which you can then grab and share via Zoom as well. And then if you have to use PowerPoint for whatever reason, PowerPoint, they don't have exactly the same thing, but they have presenter view, which can be for your which is a full screen view, which shows you your notes and the slides as well. If you're going to use PowerPoint that way, or you have other needs, there's a little trick in Zoom video sharing, in screen sharing rather. So if you click on share your screen and click on advanced, there's a little option to share a portion of your screen. And so if you were using the PowerPoint view, for example, you would share just the area, and you can resize that little window. And so you can share just the size of the screen, or just a portion of the screen that you need to. So you can share your slides from PowerPoint, for example. And if you do have like an older version of Keynote for whatever reason, you could run it in presenter view and share your screen that way as well. So at least you'll be able to see a little bit more than just a full screen version of the slides. Moving along to some utilities, three that I found interesting. First of all, Meter. This is like super handy. It can run. It can run in your menu bar, and basically it pulls all the links for all your meetings out of your calendar and just gives you sort of a one-click join meeting option in your menu bar. And so because it uses your calendar, it can pull in your Teams meetings, your Meet meetings, your Zoom meetings, all the various things that we inevitably use because of our client work. Another useful thing is mic drop. So mic drop lets you basically create a hotkey to mute your mic. It also gives you this like little window that floats above everything that says on air. So if it's helpful to have a more obvious visual notification, or just a sign that whether you're muted or not, I think it's super helpful. And then hand mirror, this runs in your menu bar as well. That is the icon. And what it does is it lets you do like a little drop down window, so you can just see what you look like in your camera if you just want to check your face really quickly before a meeting, just to, I don't know, see if you have food on your face from lunch or something like that. The second one is called mic drop. And yeah, I guess I didn't say this earlier. There's a website, howtovideolikethefuture.com. There's notes on all this stuff and links to all of these things as well. So you can get everything there. Moving along. So how to do some of these like cooler, fancier, interesting things. So really what it comes down to is just virtual cameras, and there's a bunch of them. I'll talk about a few, and then I'll do a little demo as well. So Snap Camera, I think, this made the rounds earlier. This is the one that like lets you turn your face into a potato if you want to. Use with caution. I've heard anecdotes of people getting stuck as potatoes all day and having to go to all their meetings like that. Yeah, that might be okay for some people. The other one that's interesting is this is a pretty new app. It's actually backed or run or founded by the former CEO of Evernote. And it actually lets you do some of these like things that I'm doing in this presentation right now. It is not what I'm using, but yeah, it might be an interesting option to check out if you want to add a little bit of a little bit more interest into your video conferencing. What I am using is OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. It sort of was born out of out of streaming basically. So it's used by people on Twitch and other things like that. Super versatile, and lets you do lots of interesting things. And so I will give you a really quick demo to share sort of like some of the basics, and then we can see what happens. So let's pull up my screen here. There we go. Okay, so this is what OBS looks like. Pretty straightforward. When you open it up, obviously nothing is hooked up, so you kind of have to do everything from scratch. It comes with like a default scene, so it has this idea of like scenes, which are really just like collections of objects. Like an object can be a camera, it can be a Keynote window, it could be an image, and then you sort of layer them under your sources view there. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to add a source, and I'm going to add a video capture device. So that's like a webcam, for example. So I'm going to add that, and I'm going to choose this Logitech Brio here. There we go. So you can see me. We'll say okay. And so suddenly I have this this view here of my webcam. And I'm going to make it fit to the screen. That's good. So, you know, this is sort of like the most basic thing that you would do. OBS has a virtual camera plugin. And so similar to, you know, using Snap Camera or something like that, you would run OBS, and then in Zoom, you would choose OBS virtual camera as your camera. You know, for example, let's set up another scene. Let's call this dancing. And I'm going to add an image, and I'm going to choose, oh, let's see, there we go. I'm going to choose this image that I have here. And again, fit this to screen. And so if you've seen me, I don't know, switch to a screen of someone clapping, that's basically what's happening. So you're seeing my virtual camera here, and then I'm switching to whatever it is, and then switching back. So again, relatively straightforward, and I don't know, and unlimited really in terms of what you can do or might want to do. The stuff that I'm doing right now, so in terms of the setup that I'm using for this demo, really all it is, it's OBS and Keynote. So everything in terms of like the graphics and all that, it's all happening in Keynote. And the way that it's getting composited together is via basically like green screen. But what you can do is, so I've got Keynote opened here. And so let's give this a title. Hello world. Remember how to spell world. And then I can go back to my OBS window, and I'm going to add a window capture this time. And I'm going to choose Keynote as the window. So again, you can see it here. Let's make it fit the screen. Did that work? Nope. Let's try it one more time. Oh, I know what's happening. I'm running Big Sur on this computer, and which is like the beta operating system, and it does strange things sometimes. Let me try one more time. There we go. So anyway, now it's fit to screen, and you can see sort of it's overlaying Keynote on top of my video, which is fine. But where things get interesting is, so let's do this. So let's change the background on this slide to green. And so again, in theory, what I wanted to do is I wanted to say hello world, but not show anything else, right? And so obviously you can see it here. Let's do this. Let's play this in a window. And that way it should fit better. There we go. So now it's overlaying my video completely. And then what you can do is you can go into filters, and there's all kinds of like audio and video filters you can add to things. And I'm going to add an effect filter, which is a chroma key. I'm going to say okay. And I do that, and there's an overlay. So it's basically removing everything that's green, and it's just leaving the let me see if, you know, the video, and it's like overlaid on top like that. So again, pretty straightforward. That these are like all the basic building blocks in terms of what you need to do. And, you know, you can start doing interesting things with your Keynote or other presentation stuff. yeah, and so, you know, that's kind of it in terms of this demo. I think I'm going to stop there and just like open up for questions.